Something that's been flying under the radar is the big, beautiful bill and how it's going to impact sports bettors in the United States. And nobody better to talk about this than my good friend. Of course, you see him on UFC On the Line, The Gambler's Perspective, Wager Talk, Gianni, the Greek Karalas. Gianni, thanks so much for doing this, man. Nobody better to tackle this topic.
Pleasure's mine. It's a perfect timing, too. It's a little slow because it's only baseball, more or less, going on. A couple things. We got MMA on weekends, but football's around the corner. And that's where this is really going to matter, because that's the busiest time for sports books. From September through Super Bowl, they get the bulk of their volume and their betting action and highest limits, at least here in the States, during football. So, yeah, this bill is really going to affect a handful of bettors for sure.
Yeah, and let's get into this. This is the big, beautiful bill from Donald Trump. And, shout out to our mutual friend, Marcus. He was the one who kind of tipped me off about this, because up here in Canada, obviously things are a bit different. But I'm going to read kind of what my understanding is of this big, beautiful bill act. It's basically saying that it could force some bettors, the keyword there's some, to pay income tax, even in years when they have net losses in gambling, could significantly hike the tax burden on professional sports bettors. Before we get into sort of the nitty gritty of it, when did this come on your radar as far as the bill and it may be affecting your line of work?
From what I understood, it got snuck in there like late at the end when they're going to sign it. I started hearing about it from bettors that actually were DMing me and friends texting me saying, like, is this anything to worry about? So, I mean, it immediately hit the sports betting world and got around the industry real quickly. The thing was separating the noise from the substance, because again, people start to get out ahead of themselves, and there's a panic initially, there's an overreaction initially, but within days you started hearing more people that were schooled and understood the code starting to break down how this is going to affect. And I think it kind of calmed some of the people down, because the truth of the matter is, James, this isn't going to affect everybody.
Right.
We know that 99.5% of sports bettors have negative lifetime earnings.
Right.
So they're not profitable to begin with. Who this is going to affect is that 0.5% that truly makes their living betting sports. That is where the bulk of their income comes from. That's who it's going to affect, especially those that are forced to do it through books that are on the screen. And what I mean is those regulated, legal sports books that report to the IRS. Those bettors that only bet through those books, they are going to face some challenges. But you got to also remember, a lot of that 0.5% that wins long-term, James, they're not using on-screen books. They're not using these books that report. Most are using off-screen bookmakers and what we like to call, or at least the industry, the bookies, the illegal bookies, right? That don't report. And the reason they do that is twofold. One is because obviously for tax reasons, the government isn't able to see every single bet you're making or profit you're turning year after year. But also, more importantly, the reason they do it is because they don't want to tie up that kind of money in a non-interest bearing account. If you're betting, even 5 figures per game, let alone a lot of these groups are betting 6 figures per game, that means you have to have 7 figures sitting in sports betting accounts. There's not very many people that are worth 7 figures that are willing to leave that money in a non-interest bearing account. Okay. That's just the bottom line. You're not getting anything in return. You could put it in Coinbase and get 4% on your money just sitting there. So why would I let it sit in the sports book? That's why most are using those books that aren't reporting. Right. But, we also are using a handful of ones that do report. So again, it is a problem because you can no longer write off your losses against your wins like you used to before. I mean, the bottom line is this: you could lose money and still have to pay taxes as if you were profitable. That's the negative of this. Yeah. That's the problem here.
Okay. Well, I guess my question too is, why would they be doing this? Like, what's the benefit of the government for going this route with, like you said, just potentially taxing people that have losses? What's their benefit there? Is it just recouping money?
One of two reasons. I think it's a money grab, number one, because when they think casinos and all the money and sports betting and gambling, they just think there's nothing but money. that the money's just on the ground, and all they got to do is reach out and grab it. It's kind of like we saw with the legalization of marijuana, and especially once it became recreational in states like here in Nevada, where they thought, okay, all we got to do is open up and we're going to be rich overnight. I can tell you with certainty that I've seen over the last 6 months, many locations closed down because they just didn't get the business that they thought they were gonna. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not saying they're not busy. It just wasn't as busy. And I think you're looking at kind of like the same situation here with the sports betting, where it was a money grab for government, making it federal now, and not each state deciding what to do with sports betting regulation. The federal government is now going to dictate. But also, I was thinking, and someone brought it to my attention, this could also have been pushed by the sports books themselves. Meaning, what better way to eliminate winning bettors, sharp bettors, than implementing a law like this that's going to hurt them?
Yeah.
Again, we are seeing it more and more that the sports books do not want to deal with bettors that pose a risk. And by pose a risk, that simply means that are profitable. They no longer want to deal with it, and they don't have to because of the legalization, because of the influx of recreational bettors. They don't want to deal with the 0.5% that wins. And what's the quickest way to kind of get rid of them is make it so that it's no longer beneficial and profitable for them, kind of like they did to card counting with blackjack.
Yeah.
All they had to do, James, is switch the blackjack from getting paid 3 to 2 to now getting paid 6 to 5. And to most tourists, the most recreational bettors, they don't see the difference. They don't know the difference between blackjack paying 3 to 2 or 6 to 5. But for a card counter, that simple rule made the game unbeatable. So someone like myself that's an advantage blackjack player, if I see a table that says 6 to 5 blackjack, I can't beat that game no more. The edge has changed. And a lot of guys that I speak to, I mean, again, it could be conspiracy, but they think that this was pushed on by the lobbyists of the sports books as a way to get rid of some of them sharps and demotivate them and others. Because there's a lot of even younger bettors that are entering, and instead of even trying to win by handicapping, they're scalping, they're middling games. There's a big industry of scalpers and middlers out there. And with those kind of operations, you have to use those bigger sports books that do report. And I think that's going to really hurt their business the most. I think it may even shut down a lot of those shops, those scalpers, because the margins are small. You got to remember, James, even for the groups that I move for that are that 0.5% that win long term, their margins are very tight. They're very small. You don't have the kind of edge that most recreational bettors assume. And when they're adding, laws like this, which is going to hurt that margin, you got to question now, is this endeavor still worth it? I think for most betting syndicates, it will continue to be worth it because they are able to overcome using all those books that report and definitely have good accountants and lawyers. But those that aren't in that position, I do think it is going to hurt. It's not a positive. There's nothing positive from it. That's for sure. Yeah. Everything is negative. That's the bottom line.
Do you think we'll see, if this continues to go forward and the impacts of it, do you think we'll see a lot of people that are full-time bettors leave the industry permanently just because it's too much of a risk to even go in there if you're going to pay taxes on losses potentially?
I thought that was an overreaction. I really did.
Yeah.
I thought it was just like, how we always overreact. But talking to serious guys out here in Vegas, even professional poker players, let alone sports bettors, who are like, dude, I don't know if I could continue doing this the way I've been doing it and be profitable anymore. So I don't know if they're going to hang it up, but they are definitely being forced to reorganize their business model. That's definite. They're definitely being forced to do that. And I would not be surprised if a handful do realize that maybe it's not as profitable and I could move that capital elsewhere with less risk and get pretty much the same return. And there's, a lot of astute guys that if you're winning, you're pretty sharp, that are going to do exactly that. I would not be surprised. And that's not an overreaction, but I do think some that'll lay down the math and it doesn't make sense anymore, There's no reason for them to do it because these guys aren't gamblers. They use sports betting as an investment vehicle. They're not doing it for action. And if that investment vehicle is no longer giving them the ROI that another investment vehicle can, they're just going to move that capital over.
Right.
And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, before we go, because we do have to record our show here in a little bit, wanted to ask, how does this affect the line of work that you're doing? You're mostly content. We see you on TV and doing everything else, but what with the potential changes and things that are happening, how will this impact your line of work?
Yeah, luckily for me, I do 90+% off screen. I move for multiple betting syndicates in different markets. And for me to get down, I'm not even allowed to bet on screen for them because it's going to move the line everywhere. Yeah. So it's not going to affect guys like me all that much. Where it does affect me is my side hustle where I do scalp and middle, where I do allocate capital to do that, because there I'm forced to use books like Caesars, MGMs, the DraftKings, the FanDuels, the ones that are reporting. And that is where I have to now reconsider and see whether it's worth me funding that endeavor. It hasn't been, the margins are so small that I'm not even sure that's worth continuing if we're going to be forced to pay the taxes that they're saying we're now going to have to do. That's where it's going to affect me. But as far as me betting, luckily I don't have my money tied up in non-interest bearing account. I've done it long enough where I use credit shops primarily. Best way for me. So it won't really affect it all that much. Fortunately, one of the few that it doesn't at this level.
This was great. Something we'll definitely be keeping an eye on, and maybe we'll get you back on as things sort of progress and see how it impacts the industry here. But nobody better to talk about this topic than you, Gianni the Greek. Make sure you watch The Gambler's Perspective on UFC Fight Pass. And anything else you want to let our audience know that you got coming up? Because you're always doing stuff. Wager Talk. You got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, UFC on the line, The Gambler's Perspective, Wager Talk. Hopefully the Contender Series is coming up. Hopefully going to be part of this season. Haven't gotten the green light yet, but that's what I'm looking forward to. And of course, with the football season coming up, I plan to do a lot more content. Got a couple people around to help me now, so I'll be able to do that without it hurting the handicapping side of it. So yeah, really busy, but that's a good thing, especially with football around the corner.